You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Rise up! Team Rise! Rise up! Team Rise!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com. USA Today's NFL Wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals. And joining me for our training camp preview for the Arizona Cardinals is co-host Seth Cox from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site. And it's finally here. Training camp is here next week. They report. We get the first of 7 practices that fans can attend starting on July 24th. And we're here to talk all about it. We're here to talk all about it. We want to talk about we want to talk about the biggest stories coming to the camp, the roster battles, and the players that got the most approved. But Seth, there's of anything that's going forward, there's nothing. There's no Cardinals news right now, other than Trey McBride saying a few interesting things about contract negotiations, about not being Arizona fans. I actually I enjoy hearing some of these athletes on the Bus and the Boys podcast. They get the best guests, and they get them for a long period of time. Like Mac Jones had a really great interview. I'm like, oh, he's super likable.
Well, and you look at it, like, some of it was really interesting to me. I don't know how you felt about it, right? But you had him discussing the fact that he was, they basically offered him $12 million to start.
That's crazy to me.
And people are like, oh, that's the Cardinals being cheap. I was like, typically I'm with you guys on this. Like, I'm everybody that has ever listened knows I am not a Cardinals apologist, but it's not like you start negotiations at like, hey, here's the highest paid contract for a tight end in NFL history. Like, you don't start there. If that's where you end, then you're and that's your guy. You're fine with it. But you don't start from the corporate side of negotiations setting a standard, right? Like, that's just
exactly. No, I will say $12 million a year, offering $448 is crazy when he was having the season that he had. So, like, if 12 is absurdly low, you should have come in at 15. It's just below the top guys, but he's playing better than anyone else, and you start off a little bit under the Kittles and the Kelseys, and so you start off on the right foot. And that first offer made Trey think, well, I guess I'm going to play one more year in Arizona, and they wanted to get all the way to 20 ultimately, and he almost took just 16, but his agent was like, nah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but like in that case, you knew the type of player you had. Like, were you just trying to sneak one in there? Like, because 12, like for McBride, what he was doing, that was a low ball offer. That's decent tight end pay, but for the type of player that season that he had, that was absurd. That was like, well, let's see if we can get him in on this. And that was, I mean, at least start at 14, 15, kind of at least in the same ballpark as the big names.
Right. And that's, but also you do kind of, again, never siding with the Cardinals, but you do also kind of wonder if that was an agent making something up too, right? Like, oh man, they only offered you 12 million, but look at how well I did. Tell your friends, type thing. Like,
oh, that would have been interesting.
And so, I don't know, man. It's negotiations becoming so public is definitely something that's been an interesting dynamic over the last several years. And I think you would agree with that, right? Like,
yes,
it used to be like, hey, this is
which I love, by the way. I love it.
Well, it's great for us because it just gives you conversations, but like at the end of the day, you don't always want to know how the sausage is made, right? Like, and so you kind of look at these things and you go, all right, well, how do you make it work for everybody and make it so that you get this good information, but it's not overly, inflammatory because this just, dude, it just makes the Cardinals look stupid. Like,
but again, is that new? That's pretty much rarely do we get the Cardinals being showed when it comes to player anything. It's rare that they get shown in a positive light, and that's just kind of par for the course these days.
That's just the reality of everything. Yeah, and so that's what makes it, man. I mean, you look at it from that perspective, and you just kind of go from there. So, but it's interesting. You've got this is done now, which is great. You've got a guy that's, done everything the right way and earned what he's got. And so that makes it just, that just makes all of this a little more fun, right? Like a little bit more enjoyable. And that's how you have to look at it. And like you said, from there, it's just been a lot of
nothing,
well,
which is
I guess there's the griping. I guess we could talk about that a little bit, right? The griping of whether it's the fans, the media, or the teammates of Jacoby Brissett about like, why isn't this just getting done? Like, let's just get this done. And
Buddha calling it now. Well, I'm assuming that this was about Jacoby. I think it felt like it was a premeditated attack right after Jacoby gets that photograph with the skills players out in Florida. Jeremy Fowler, I think Jacoby and Jeremy Fowler are in cahoots right now. He's the one breaking a lot of the things that, hey, I've got my teammates out here. Buddha now saying he's asking for less than the bare minimum. Really? Because if that were the case, it would have been done already. But training camp's going to happen next week, and let's talk about that. The biggest stories of training camp. What are the biggest storylines of training camp? And I think story number one is Jacoby Brissett still doesn't have, there is no resolution to the Jacoby Brissett contract situation, and which leads us to wonder: is this going to go to training camp? Is Jacoby going to report 1, 2, and he'll probably do it to avoid the fines? Is he going to practice? How far does this go? That's kind of my question. Is like, we've talked about all the ins and outs of this, but it's still being a story is quite notable because the initial report was that the Cardinals were willing to work with him. Then it came out that they were a gazillion years apart. Who's going to budge? We've established that if he's going to be the starter, he should get paid more. He deserves more money as a starting quarterback. But we also understand that the Cardinals have no reason to pay him more because his younger clone in Gardner Minshew, they have, and they drafted a quarterback they want to know a little bit. So it doesn't really make sense to just give him money for no reason other than just to appease him and maybe to keep the peace in the locker room. But I don't know. Like, to me, this is still the biggest. It's not just a story. It's a freaking albatross entering camp.
Well, and it's just one of those situations of you and I have talked about it, and I get, we always understand the player side of things, right? Like, they want their teammates to be paid, and we understand that, and but there's also this kind of reality, Jess, and something that you and I have discussed and gone back and forth on, and we're in basic agreement on this of what is the incentive if you are the Arizona Cardinals. We all understand Jacoby's incentive, right? Like, this is it, right? This is the final chance, final opportunity to cash in. But genuinely, if you are the Arizona Cardinals, what is your reasoning for even kind of going to make that payment? Like, what are you, like, you spent all offseason trying to replace Jacoby Brissett. Now it didn't work out, so now you're here and he wants money because he's your quote unquote starter for how long? Like, what is, and I think that's probably why this isn't getting done. If I had to guess, there's this reality that the Cardinals are like, we don't need to and or want to hurry. Like, you're going to start only in Arizona. That's literally the only chance you have to start in the NFL this year. And you're 1-11 as a starter in Arizona. You're 3-14 as a starter in your last two situations, or 2-15. Sorry,
and 20-45 in his career.
Right. So it's not like, teams are knocking down the door to make you a start. If they were, this probably wouldn't even be an issue, because they probably would have gotten calls over the summer or like the spring of like, hey, we'll trade for Jacoby instead of running it back with Geno Smith. Right. Like,
yeah.
And so, like, all of those things to me are they're just difficult conversations that nobody really wants to have.
Well, it's interesting at this point too, because it's almost reaching a point where you might as well just cut him. That it's almost to that point, because I don't know how either side comes out of this happy. Either Jacoby's going to be upset and on the roster, or the Cardinals pay him more than he wants to get paid, or, God forbid, pull another situation like we had 30 years ago where he's in line for some incentives and the edicts come down from the front to bench him so he can't hit them. They've done it before. They've done this before, so they don't have to pay a guy that they don't want to pay. And so, like, at this point, it's almost, and there's almost no downside to simply cutting him, because you weren't going to be good with him in the first place. If he shows up without getting the money that he wants, he's going to be unhappy. The teammates obviously are, who support Jacoby are not going to be thrilled either way. But guess what? Once it comes to the play on the field, they'd be fine with Gardner. They'd be fine with Carson. They would be fine with that. At the end of the day, that's not going to matter. And I think this dragging on and on just looks more and more. It just looks like a terrible situation for everyone involved.
Yeah, and that is just the Arizona Cardinals to a T, though. I saw some people that took offense to Trey McBride a little bit. When it was basically on that Bussin' with the Boys interview, when it was basically him kind of acknowledging that it's really just him and Budda Baker from a skill talent standpoint on the roster. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's not inaccurate, right? Like, what other talent? I wrote about this the other day, Jess, and I think again you would 100% agree with me. I wrote about who, if Josh Sweat is healthy and on this roster for the full season, if he doesn't lead the team in sacks, either it's been a disappointing year for him or somebody made huge strides, right? And so the question became, if Sweat is on the roster, who would you say finishes second on the team in sacks? And you go through the list, and it's literally like there's literally not a single one where you go,
you hope it's Walter Nolan.
But that was kind of my point. Like, everything is, hopefully. Like,
yes.
Like, there's not a single solitary player that you go, oh, this is the guy, right? Like, no. You don't go, oh, BJ Ojulari, yeah, that's the guy. You don't go Walter Nolan, Darius Robinson, Baron Browning, Jordan Birch. Like, outside of Ojulari's 5 sacks as a rookie, this group as a whole of secondary pass rushers are, underwhelming, I guess is the kindest way to put it.
It's baffling. It's baffling that they did the position. We've discussed that all offseason. It's baffling they did nothing at the position.
And so it becomes this conversation of like, well, let's hope that let's hope that Walter Nolan, who looked really good in his very, very, and we can't emphasize enough, very limited time, looked very explosive and talented. Let's hope that he is the guy. But it's also super unfair to expect a guy that's basically going into his rookie season to be the guy. Like, I mean,
yeah, it is a bit unfair for that.
And so, like, those are that's where they are as a roster. And so then you talk about the offense, right? And you look at the offense, and you mentioned Jacoby. You mentioned like the battles, or not the battles, but like the stories entering camp. What does this offense even look like?
Yeah, that's another good story. Like, what's it going to look like? Because last year the Rams led the NFL in 3 tight end sets. The Cardinals did a lot of 3 tight end sets as well. Like, how much of that was LaFleur? How much of that was McVay? How much of that was just trying to focus the offense through Kyron Williams? Like, is that going to be what the Cardinals offense looks like? Are we going to be able to tell in training camp?
Right. And is it something we'll be able to even report? Like, once we do start to see the differences and we're like, oh yeah, that's not going to happen. So those are interesting takes. You talk about another storyline kind of entering camp is like the Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. storyline of what it, are they good? Like, I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it. Like, we've said it before. There's really no incentive for Michael Wilson to sign a contract with the Arizona Cardinals right now, other than Michael Wilson going, man, I got really lucky playing on a bad team that threw the ball a ton, like set records for how much they were throwing the ball consistently. I don't think I'm going to get that again. Maybe I should sign this contract. But like, guys don't think that way, right? He's looking at it as like, I was finally featured. I finally broke through. Let's get going now. And by the time this is all said and done, this, 18 to 22 million is going to look more like 28 to 32 million, right? And that's a gamble I appreciate from a player, right? Taking that gamble. But at the same time too, how much does it matter to the Cardinals as an organization to have a guy like Marvin Harrison finally break out and justify his pick? Because as much as we like Paris Johnson Jr., there's not been a single solitary first round pick that you would say this guy's a cornerstone piece of this organization. Now, that's not to say that Paris isn't close, but I mean, it's not like he's played 17 games a year. And you and I've kind of set the baseline, right? Like, hey, if you can get 15 games, like that's a full season in today's NFL, right? And he's only hit that mark once. And so like these are questions and fascinating questions of like, are any of Monty Ossenfort's first round picks, by the way, guys that have been top, 3, and I know Paris ended up being a top 6 pick, but like guys that were top 3, are they actually cornerstone pieces? Because right now the answer is unequivocally no.
Yeah.
And when you're a bad organization, I don't think we can disagree here, Jess. You can't miss on even top 10 picks. Like, you can't miss those picks, especially, we were talking about it in our other group chat the other day.
There's one way to do it. It's to do what the 49ers did on Trey Lance and get the magic of a 7th round pick in Brock Purdy.
Right. But like we were talking about the other day, there's this reality of Paris Johnson has to become a top 10 tackle in the NFL at this point to justify passing on a guy that's widely considered the second best pass rusher in the NFL after a unequivocal, generational pass rusher in Myles Garrett, right? So like those are situations that have not been figured out, and it makes it really difficult for the Cardinals as a whole to, or us as Cardinals fans or guys that write about it to look at things and be like, oh yeah, they're on the right path, right? Because nothing is happening.
Yeah. Another pair of stories like for the Cardinals entering camp that I'm paying attention. So who of the injured guys are coming back? Like, how is the health of the injured guys? And also the rookies. How, like, when do they crack? How much reps will they be getting? Like, will we see Jeremiah Love, Chase Besantis continue to run with the second team or when will that change? Those are the other two main things. That and the health of guys, Walter Nolan being one of them, James Conner, Trey Benson. What is the health status of those guys as camp starts?
Well, and it's super interesting to think about, not just the running back position, but a number of positions overall that have just not really lived up to the investment. And the running back position is now, let's be honest. I think PFF wrote about it. There's not a running back room that's been more invested in at this point than the Cardinals. Obviously, even before the addition of Jeremy Love, you had James Conner renegotiated his contract. You had a third-round pick in Trey Benson. You had obviously the Tyler Algier contract, but to then take a player third overall, and we've beat this horse to death already, and basically say hey, you have to be a top 7 running back in the NFL immediately to justify the salary, the pick, all of that. That's a wild investment overall. And I don't know any other way to say it. And so it's you've got those investments, you've got then the lack of investment, right, along the defensive front. I mean, you've invested, sure, some, but I mean, Josh Sweat, is he even? I think he's at 12 now in terms of overpay for edge rushers, and that kind of coincides with where he is thought of and falls just in the NFL overall, right? So,
yeah,
I would say his contract is fair to favorable, if not anything else. So, those are situations where you're just talking about the Arizona Cardinals and what is, I don't know, next, or what the plan is at these positions, because the running back room is highly invested in, but it's a mess outside of the top 2, right?
And the interesting thing is that you could justify investing that into the running room. Say, if this were a Jim Harbaugh team, right? You'd be like, oh, okay, power running the football, grind it out, 1990s football. That would be paired by investing in the defensive side of the ball so that the game slows down. If you want to be a power running football, you've got to be able to play defense, and this defense doesn't look improved in the least.
Right. And that's a great point, Jess, of what does the defense look like? What does a Nick Rallis led
without Jonathan Gannon around?
Yeah, non-Jonathan Gannon led defense look like? And that's a legitimate question that we haven't even gotten close to an answer to yet.
Yeah. Coming up next on the Rizzo Seaward podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web. Let's move on and talk about the biggest roster battles and position battles we're looking at for training camp. That's coming up next on Rise Up C-Red.
What would you do if your online store converted 36% more shoppers? You could take 36% more vacation.
Another pina colada?
Yes, please.
Open a new retail location with 36% more square feet.
Fantastic.
Hire 36% more help.
You're hired and you're hired.
Shopify has the world's best converting checkout, up to 36% better than other e-commerce platforms. What you do with those extra sales is up to you. Switch to Shopify today at shopify.com/listen and get a $1 trial. Shopify.com/listen.
We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Best Our Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking about the Arizona Cardinals training camp. It's our training camp preview. We now want to discuss which position battles and roster battles we are most paying attention to. And I'm guessing we have to stare down number one is the quarterback room, because if and when Jacoby gets back, it's more or less when is it Carson Beck's turn? Does he do enough, especially if this Jacoby thing lingers on? We're interested in seeing whether or not Beck does enough in training camp to basically decide, all right, we'll just roll with the rookie to start off. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think that might be perhaps for everyone paying attention to the Cardinals. That is the position everyone is watching, specifically when will Beck get his chance?
Well, Justin, I have some questions, right? Like, obviously, first off, this is a new offense. You mentioned there's going to be a lot of 3 tight end sets, so there's going to be a lot of emphasis on trying to run the football consistently. So there should be, theoretically, a high level of play action passing. That is something that is really grown with timing and things of that nature. And to completely miss all of that time in camp, and I know they had the super cool workouts down in Miami, right? Like, that was awesome. But like, to miss all that time in camp to get into the install and things of that nature, that's a huge loss from that standpoint of just getting better, getting that timing down, getting that rhythm down, understanding where each other is and is going to be. And so, like, those are things that you can't really make up for time wise. So we'll see how that looks. And the question becomes, if Jacoby comes out, as the expected starter and just really, really struggles, like how long do you even give him? Like, are we talking a game? Are we talking 4 games? Like, you can't miss everything, hold out, demand more money, theoretically get paid more money. I mean, you and I are both of the opinion that he will get, a little bit more of a raise. And then just completely be awful. And then the other question is, okay, if Jacoby's not awful, but it's more of the same where there's not a lot of competitive football being played, but he's putting up, the same type of numbers. When do you pull the plug on that? Like, are we talking 0-4, 1-6? Like, where do you say enough is enough of losing? Because at some point too, there is a reality of guys being good enough to give you or make you a competitive team. And that's something that Jacoby didn't do much of last year, right?
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the interesting battles, and we stay, right next to the quarterback, for the running back situation, what do the reps look like?
Yes, 100%. Well, is it going to be Love out the gates with a heavy dose of Algier, or are they going to lead him in? And here's the back end too, like James Conner, Trey Benson, and the rest of the guys. Who are those? Because I don't think you're going to keep a 4-man roster running back room of Algier, Love, Conner, and Benson. Someone is getting cut. Benson or Conner is getting traded or cut, in my opinion. Because
what if? Let me ask you a question, and I know this is a super hypothetical and all of that, but let's say a team, God forbid, even like the Falcons, right? Because everybody loves Bijan. He's a local kid. But a team like the Falcons even, right? Bijan goes down. And would you, if Love shows enough and Connor shows that he's healthy, is making that move, like trading Algier to somebody else, is that even worth it? Do you think? Like, is that even? I know it's crazy, and I'm not just saying the Falcons, but just any team in general. If their top running back goes down, like do you think that's something that can happen?
I mean, I honestly, I could see it. That would mean having paid Tyler Algier $5.5 million to just trade him away for a 4th round pick.
Right. And again, that's that's tough, man. That is tough. But the reality becomes that it's if, right? Like, if Love shows enough, but also if the rest of this running back room is healthy. But I think that's why you can't do it. I think that's why you're accurate. Like, if you could get a 6th round pick for either Connor or Benson, I think you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I know Benson is more of a sentimental vibe at this point, right?
I think if you can deal Benson for anything, you jump on that deal today.
But like, this is the reality, Jess. I don't think there's any way, shape, or form you can't go into this, because we love Connor. We've loved what he's been for the Arizona Cardinals, but you cannot go into this room with even Love, Connor, and Benson, or the season. Like, you have to have Algier as the singular kind of been there, done that, done everything type of guy, right? Like, no questions asked, can give you 17 games, hasn't been an injury concern, because with Connor, obviously, just the way he plays the game, you're always going to have those questions. And then Benson's just never done it. Like, there's just, you can't do that. So those, I think for us, and again, this is a question that Camp's not going to answer, barring an injury, and God forbid, but barring an injury, that we're not going to know until probably week 3 or 4, because even in week 1 and 2, it's probably going to be a little bit of a feeling out period, I would assume.
Yeah.
Let's see what these guys have. Let's see what, let's see what Algier can handle. Let's see what Love can handle in the NFL. Because, you and I have talked about it ever since they drafted Jeremiah Love. Tyler Algier, his time in Atlanta, and that year in Atlanta where he, was the number 1, but really the number 2, you look at his numbers, Jess, and 186 attempts, 683 yards, 4 touchdowns. And he was just not, I don't want to say not good, because that's disrespectful to him, but like, he was just clearly not as talented as Bijan Robinson.
Right.
But can anyone, including you and I, knock what the Falcons did with how Robinson's looked the next couple of seasons, right? Exactly. He only got 976 yards as a rookie. Then he just rips off almost 3,000 yards in back-to-backs, 3,000 yards in his next 2 seasons. Like, those numbers, if that's Jeremiah Love and his rookie season, again, I use only in quotation marks, right? But if his season is only 272 touches for 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he's 4th or 5th in offensive rookie of the year voting, there will be a vocal maybe even majority that says wasted pick. This is why you don't draft running backs highly. But if the follow-up season 2 and 3 is similar or God forbid equal to what Bijan Robinson did, you're just going, all right. great pick. Hopefully it leads to more wins, but yeah, great pick.
Yeah, we look at, I think, among the starters on the offensive front, the right guard is intriguing because you've got Isaiah Adams there right now, and you feel like Chase Besantis, their second-round pick, is going to overtake at some point. But that's one to watch there. Everything else on offense is the very back of the roster. So the offensive line depth, the who's going to be receiver 4, 5, 6, who's going to be tight end 4. And those are far less interesting. On the defensive side of the ball, I think the most important battles are taking place at cornerback, who's going to play. You got Will Johnson. Who are going to be the other two guys that play? When is Garrett Williams coming back? Is it going to be Denzel Burke and Sean Murphy Bunting? Where does Star Thomas fit in? Who, by the way, Nick Rawls is a big Star Thomas fan. What happens with Max Melton? Does he get pushed back as he get traded? And so the cornerback is the other position on defense where playing time is definitely up. And then there's two other notable battles on defense, and that is Jack Gibbons versus Cody Simon. And then at safety, is it going to be more Rabbit or is it going to be Andrew Wingard in terms of the starting lineup? And then obviously the very back end of all the position groups, which is a far less interesting conversation to have. Who's going to be defensive line 6? Who's going to be edge 5? And things like that.
Well, I do think there are some interesting questions along the defensive line of who is that secondary pass rusher? Like, who gets first crack at it? We know the starter is going to be Zaven, right? Unless something crazy happens. But the starter is going to be Zaven. But from there, who is the guy that gets the first pass rush opportunities? And to me, the question becomes, is it Baron Browning? Is it Jordan Birch? Like, we're not asking who's second in sacks. That could be Walter Nolan, right? That could be, God forbid, Darius Robinson. But like, who's the first pass rusher off the opposite Josh Sweat? Because again, we went over this a little bit earlier. I get that, but like, this is a legitimate question. Is it going to be Baron Browning or is it going to be BJ Argelari? Will Jordan Birch? And it's unfair to expect a 3rd round pick in year 2 to make that leap, right? But is it going to be like, so who is it? Those are legitimate questions for me right now, because we know who the starters are. We know it's
right.
We know, barring injury or just complete change in philosophy, it's going to be Josh Sweat and Zaven Collins, or a trade, if Josh Sweat gets traded. But barring any of that, it's going to be Josh Sweat and Zaven Collins. So who is the first guy? And off the bench is probably a strong word, but who is that pass rusher? Who is the number 2 pass rusher? And does anybody step up? Because for all of the quarterback discussion that we're going to have this season, if the Cardinals are bad, I think the most legitimate critique we can have at this moment of Monty Ossenfort is simply, why have you not invested in either the draft or free agency in an edge rusher? Like, how has that not been because because we can't knock the defensive line. It has not worked. But that's a different conversation.
They've thrown a lot of money and resources on the defensive line. It just hasn't. They've just been bad at it.
But like the fact that his big investment again was a fringe top 15 pass rusher, and that's not a shot or a knock at Josh Sweat, just a reality. And you paid him like one, and then no first round, no second round, no. I know they traded for Baron Browning, but no trade, like nothing else invest. Like that is just insanity. Is it not?
It's for considering the weakness that they've had. It's one that it hasn't made sense. It's going to be interesting to see how these other positions play out in camp. But let's do one final part. Coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. Who are the players that have the most to prove in camp this year? That's coming up next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web, talking Arizona Cardinals training camp preview. What we want to know is talk about now. Who are the players with the most to prove? And if we start on the offensive side of the ball, I think for me, Trey Benson. I think of all the offensive players, Trey Benson has the most to prove because I think he's the most likely, like, known name to get cut of that group on the offensive side of the ball because, he's been injured both of his seasons. They added 2 running backs and brought back Connor. Benson plays no special. He's played as many special team snaps through 2 seasons as you and I have in our lives, which is none, at least in the NFL. But I think he has a ton to prove. And then number 2, you look at the combo, as you kind of talk about both of them earlier, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson. Like Wilson to prove, is he just was that a fluke because of the passing? And Harrison, come on, he needs to be dominant.
Right. And I do think it's unfair, but also a reality that, when you start to invoke names, and again, there's not a planet where Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. are Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, right? There's not a single planet that's true. But when you're saying, hey, we're going to give Michael Wilson the Puka Nacua role, and we're going to give Marvin Harrison the Devontae Adams role, it's, I don't want to say easy because that's again disrespectful, but like it's easy to start to envision like, okay, I see what they're wanting to accomplish, right? Like I see that their goal is to isolate matchups for Marvin Harrison Jr. on the outside consistently. And I see that their goal is to create mismatches for Michael Wilson by moving him all around the field. And now we know, Jess, like, again, we understand, you and I are very perceptive. 129 receptions and 1,700 receiving yards is not happening for Michael Wilson. I'm sorry. It's just
no.
One, they don't have the quarterback that can help them with that. And 2, it's not going to happen. It's okay. It doesn't mean it can't. It just means as constructed at this moment, the team's not set up to facilitate that. So you have that reality. So now the question becomes, can you get to the other things? Can you average over 13 yards of reception for both Nacua and Adams when you're talking about getting those in big moments, not later in game after things are done, right? And then the second thing is, I do think the 14-10 might be heavy, but we can talk about maybe 10-8, right? Receiving touchdowns for them. So 10 for Marv in the Devontae role, and 8 for Michael in the Puka role. And now that does also negate, obviously, the most talented and highly paid tight end in the NFL, and Trey McBride. That also does not factor in the reality of who's throwing them the football, the reigning NFL MVP, as opposed to journeyman Jacoby or third round 25-year-old rookie Carson Beck, right? So all of that is taking into account somewhat, but if you're going to invoke the names, if you're going to say we hired this guy to create these opportunities, then you better find a way to get something similar, not saying, directly the same, but something very similar in terms of production from that duo.
Yeah. On the defensive side of the ball, I think there are two clear players who have something that it's two players who really must prove something this year: Darius Robinson and Max Melton. Robinson, because he enters year 3, has not accomplished really anything yet. And then Max Melton, because he sort of faded into last year, late in the year. And while they do have cornerback talent, do you want to end up having it being a second round waste?
Well, and I do question or wonder, I guess, how does Max Melton repair the relationship with Nick Rallis after his post on social media about him coming back, right?
So supposedly we presume is about Rallis, yes. If you don't recall, when the report came out that Rallis was returning, Melton posted a video of being, I can't remember what it was, but it was like, this guy again? Oh, get this guy out of here.
Exactly. And so, like, both of those situations, like, that's going to be really interesting to watch, because is the bridge burned, right? Like, is that a burnt bridge that can't be recovered from? How is, like, to me, if you're Rallis, you have to be the big man. I know you're probably 6 years older than Max Melton, but like, you've got to be the bigger man in this instance and say, hey, that's one of those situations where I allowed my emotions to get the best of me, and should not have said that. I should not have posted that. And I apologize. And hopefully, with this fresh start as a team, we're taking a fresh start as a duo. And that's all we can do as a group, right? Like, if he's just bad and he gets cut, he's just bad and he gets cut, right? But again, you can't have a second round pick that is only going into year 3 that's getting cut, right?
Yeah, that would be less than ideal for sure. Anyone else of note for you, do you think, that has something the most to prove this season?
Again, I know it's insane, and it's going to be back here every week. I mean, let's be honest, Jess, we're going to get the saddest quarterback reports every single week. But What is the result, or how do we handle if Jacoby's terrible in all training camp? And there has not been a contract resolution yet.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna be wild. But I mean, there are so many fans that have already kind of checked out on Jacoby. All the goodwill he earned last year for his play and his fantasy numbers and things like that. This holdout has really soured those people on him. So I really doubt that. Like, if he's got something to prove, but I think everyone knows, even if he plays, he's holding somebody's spot, whether it's Minshew or Beck. Beck's going to play at some point. And so I think the noise for Beck will get louder and louder, unless Minshew's fun. And I think Minshew will be I personally would love to see Minshew enter the year as a starter, because guess what? Dude is interesting. Dude is fun. He flames out sometimes, but he's an exciting player to watch.
Yeah, but who cares about flaming out when you're at least enjoyable to watch, right?
Yes. Could you either get spectacular or terrible?
Well, no, Jess, you nailed it the first time. You did not need to give a different opinion. It's either it's going to be spectacular or it's going to be spectacularly awful, and it's going to be, at least one of those things to watch where you're like, oh, okay, well, at least there's some like interest in this. Like, it's not garbage time, nothing like that. So like those are all the things that get interesting to me, and how it's going to work out. But this is Jess, this is our 13th year doing this, or 12th or 13th year doing
13th.
This. Jess, this is legitimately the least interesting training camp preview I can remember. I don't know how you feel about it.
It really is, because like you go into, like, we look at last year, 2023, it was Kyler's going to come back. And so we're like, okay, let's see what we got. Can Colt McCoy do it? They end up getting Josh Dobbs. Then the next 2 years they were ascending. 2022 was interesting because of the Kyler holdout and things like that. We had the COVID previously. Yeah, this is even 2018, which was a disaster of a year. Training camp was interesting because you had Josh Rosie, you had Sam Bradford, you had a new head coach. There was a whole lot, but this year we're like, it's there are some storylines, but not like because we have this Jacoby Brissett contract situation as hanging over. It's the albatross, it's the elephant in the it's all the metaphors and all of the sayings and all the cliches, but it really is just clouding everything about this, at least entering this season.
It is, and so we'll see how it all turns out. But for now, Jess, it's just, let's hope that they're interesting. Good is,
at least that.
Good is the next step, but let's hope for interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that'll wrap up this edition of the Rise of Sierra podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the Web. We are in the midst this month. We've got some opponent previews coming. Seth and I'll be back soon to talk about training camp news and NFC West rankings. But until then, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise Up, Red Sea, Be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.